Hello everybody, welcome to Crafty Soup. My name is Misty. Let me tell you about today's episode. It is SCT Sampler Kit time again, and so I'm going to unbox my kit as usual. And if you've been around for a while, you know that I always do a project when I do an unboxing, so you can see how to use these beautiful supplies instead of just collecting them. So let's get started. All right, here's my beautiful little package in the mail. I always love getting these things and I love squeezing the package, and this one is a little chunky, so I'm excited to see. Plus, it is the beginning of the new year and I'm wondering if SCT has any surprises in store for us in terms of what they're going to be doing this year. Last year they surprised us with dies all year long. So when you open it up, you get your theme card as usual, and I'm going to go ahead and pull that out. On the back is a list of all the supplies. Usually there's 2 manufacturers. This time we've got some extra things going on in here and 1 manufacturer, so we'll talk a little bit more about that. I was trying to figure out what this plastic bag was, and it was all wrapped up in things, and that is our die set. So we are getting dies again this year, I'm assuming all year long. And this die is a little more detailed than some of the other dies we've had. It's got this extra banner piece with these extra layers on it, and I'll talk more about that when I get to making a project. So I set that aside and I start looking through everything else, and I realize that the part of the thickness in here was this it is a wood frame. It's painted wood, and the thickness was from these foam dots. So we got some of those goodies in there. I think the wood frame was from Spellbinders, but I'll get to that again in a minute. And some of my little shiny enamel dots in here are these little gemstones, and I'm going to go ahead and give you a closer look at those because these things are so iridescent and magical. The camera is just not doing them justice. They turn from pink to radiant yellow and back again at the flick of the light, and they are just so pretty. And these ones are teeny tiny. Because it's a partial package, perhaps they come on a full package with bigger sizes, maybe. I don't know, I'd have to go look it up. Speaking of which, I will leave you links in the description below of any of these supplies in case you want to buy these supplies independently from these kits. And if you're interested in these kits, that is in the link below also. So our main set of supplies this time around, and I love that little phone icon, and we got some enamel dots in there too. Our main set of supplies this time around is from Simple Stories, and I can't quite remember what they're calling this collection, but at the beginning of the year, for the past few years, they've released a calendar style collection for the whole year. And so that's what we've got going on. Now the stencil, I wasn't sure where that was coming from, and it turns out that's from SCT also. So now I'm really wondering if we're going to be getting stencils on a regular basis because I really like stencils. So we'll see how that goes. And I'm going to flip through these Simple Stories cut aparts. Now you're going to get a sample from the set of 12 by 12 pattern papers, and because these are journaling cards that go throughout the year, you may or may not get some of the cards that say what the month is on them. And then taking a little bit of a peek at the back sides, remember that only one side of this collection is calendar themed. The B sides of the papers are going to be generally usable. So that is really something I appreciate when manufacturers think about being able to use the B-side if you don't like the theme. However, the theme of these papers has given me an idea, and I will talk more about that when we get to the project. I'm going to go ahead and go through the rest of these cut aparts, and like I said earlier, all of these papers came from originally the same sheets of 12 by 12, so you can see the fronts or the back sides, the B sides are the same patterns as the other cards there are. And I really, this flower pattern is just so pretty. I mean, I already said it, I really like Simple Stories. I like their color sense and kind of their balance between kind of graphic style and kind of sweet style. So that's kind of the spot I fall right into there. So that works for me. All right, there's all of the supplies that we've gotten in the kit this month. And I was looking to see who the enamel dots were from. The sparkly dots were from Spellbinders, as well as the chipboard frame, or not chipboard, wood frame. And the enamel dots were Simple Stories. All right, let's get this project started. I have 2 photos from the month of January, and I'm going to use this kit to start a year-long documenting journey. And that's what these supplies are intended for, and that's what I'm going to use them for. So I'm going to start with the January supplies and a few of the bits and pieces, and throughout the year I'll probably have to fill in some extra supplies here and there. Maybe I'll buy some new ones, maybe I'll just find things that match from my stash. We'll see how that goes. And because this is January, I'm going to go ahead and use those January cut-aparts, and one of them I know I want to die cut with that love die, so I am trying to sort through these pieces and decide which one I like the least, and I will use the back side. In the meantime, I've pulled out some other pieces here that I actually designed, and they're available for free over on my blog, and I'll leave you links to that down below. I'm starting to design simple, printable scrapbooking, card making supplies and offering them for free as I learn to increase my speed and skills with some of the software that I'm working with. And it's just fun, and if we both have, I learn something and you get something for free, I think that is a win-win. So I have got the pink color chosen. I did do those exact same supplies in 2 colors on that freebie, so if you like blue rather than pink, that is an option as well. And as I was chit-chatting, I went ahead and chose some die cutting to do with that die, and look at how detailed this die is. The word "lots of love" on that little banner cut nicely. I did need to shim it a little bit, but your die cutter will vary. And I did cut 3 of those so that I can die cut stack them, and I was just really impressed with the detail of that die. At any rate, I am stacking those up in the die cut stack technique, just gluing them all together to create a nice thickness to that, and then I will layer it up on some yellow, which is the back side of one of those journaling cards. Now don't forget about your negative pieces. You can save those, line them up, and I kind of use a pair of tweezers to kind of dangle them so that they all line up. I'm going to glue those together and trim off the edges, and I'll have another embellishment for something else. So back to my 2023 little kind of chipboard style piece. I am going to try and find some ink that matches. But before I do that, I'm going to doodle a border on this layout, especially when I'm using white cardstock backgrounds. I like to do doodled borders. But the reason I did that is so that I could flip the paper over and use the back side and kind of help my brain settle on what's front side and what's back side. Although, you know, once it's all full of ink, you can tell. But it also helps me be a little more cautious with the front side once I have inky fingers. I have 2 inks here. One is the Orchid from the Stamp Market, and the other one is Sugared Lavender from Catherine Pooler, and I'm just testing out both of them to see which kind I like. I do wipe down my stencil, and I wipe that foam applicator on my towel that is slightly damp in between colors so that I don't transfer the colors between ink pads, and I can get a truer color to see what I like. So I end up picking the Sugared Lavender from Catherine Pooler and a light version of that. So I don't want my ink foam to be heavily inked. And that way you can get different color tones out of the same ink pad as if you just use more or less ink. I am going to kind of do 3 little areas of stenciling. I start off with 2, and then you'll see me add a small 3rd area later down at the bottom. I bring in my journaling card to kind of try and see where this stenciling is going to peek around the edge, because there's no need to stencil underneath the whole thing, because that just uses extra time and ink, which we don't need to do because we can keep on moving along with this layout. When I finished the right-hand side, I realized that I liked having the hearts more kind of overlapping that border area a little bit, and that the ones on the left-hand side weren't going to peek out quite as much from the journaling card as I had expected. So I'm trying to very carefully add in a couple more hearts. Since I can't like realign my stencil and just keep using the stencil, I had to just use a new section of the stencil and try not to ink over the hearts that I already had there. And here I'm getting a little nitpicky with the placement of things. I really like, I like to be specific about how my embellishments overlap and touch each other, and how they're overlapping with the hearts in the background. So I know those are really small details, but those are some of the things that I'd say that make me satisfied when they go right, but it also can be a hindrance when it's not working out. So I digress. At any rate, I've got my photos out, and I want to put the current photo up on foam dots so that it is more towards the viewer, and that makes it more prominent since that is what's happening right now. And the background photo there, was a few days after she was born. And then I realized my little die cut piece didn't nestle in quite how I wanted it to. And again, this is some of those little nitpicky details that I really think about. I liked how the loop of the L could tuck in between both photos, and that made a resting spot for the right-hand photo to sit on top of the rest of the words, like a little shelf. So that's why I got picky about those things. Down in the bottom, I'm going to get my journaling cards going on, and you saw me kind of pointing out the pencils on the January card, and I am not liking the theme of pencils and supplies, so I am going to try and figure out how to cover those up. And these two pinks don't match, and it would be okay if there was enough of each kind of pink to put throughout the layout, but when you have one of one color and one of another color, it's much more noticeable that they are different. So I set that aside and I'm thinking about what to do. In the meantime, I've pulled out a couple of other things. I put a die cut by the upper photo, and I'm pulling out a few more pieces to try and hide that pencil office school theme on the January card. So I've got a couple stickers and a butterfly die cut, and of course my die cut's going to get popped up on foam dots as well. And I'm looking for another piece to try and hide the icons down on the bottom of that journaling card. And I know I'm covering up some of the numbers on the calendar, but because the calendar isn't accurate to what our actual dates are, it's more of a stylized calendar, I don't mind covering up some of those numbers. And I realized I needed a little bit more to cover up the bottom section. So I went ahead and removed that sticker, the circular sticker. Luckily, it came off just fine, and that gives me enough extra room to cover up the things at the bottom, and it helps tie in the top of the journaling card with the bottom. So that is a good use of stickers, is to cut them apart and stretch them into multiple sections of your layout. And because that cut apart edge up there is a little bit harsh, I added one more thing just to kind of soften it up a little bit. Now I'm looking at the journaling. I did leave room on this layout for more photos because we're not done with January yet. I might have, pardon me, I might have a couple more photos that could end up being prominent. So I've got this layout going on so that I could add more photos or I could leave it. So that's a hard balance to hit there. And when I'm using those journaling cards in numbers, I always like to number the photo that the journaling goes with. So that's what I'm doing here. I had a little die set of number alphabet dies that have numbers in it. So I cut out the number 1 from the rest of that yellow pattern paper that I used for the die cut. Because I realized that die cut is the only place where there's yellow, I do want to kind of spread out that yellow a little bit more for the same reasons that I mentioned earlier. I'm going to back that die cut with a white piece of cardstock. And then I realized the white number isn't showing up very well. So I try outlining it with a black pen, which is something I do commonly, but because that number is pretty tiny, the black pen kind of ate up all the space, so then it looks too harsh. So I'm going to redo it. I'm going to punch out a green to put behind my little number 1 die cut, and I like that much better. I was worried that green wasn't gonna, it was gonna clash with the other green, but because it's such a small amount, you don't notice that they're different. Okay, that's where I added a little bit more of the stenciling down at the bottom so that if I want to leave this layout as is, that has some balance to it there. Or I have room in that white space to add more photos and room to add more journaling. And I will do that off screen. And here we come back with some more of these close-ups where you can see I added a few bits and bobs, including those really sparkly gems from that Spellbinders set of gems. Those things are amazing. At any rate, that is what I have for you this time. I encourage you to go check out these sampler kits. I know they're not for everybody, but I love them and I will share my love of them with you. All right, until I see you next time, I hope you have an artful day.